10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
Oh, it's just what you've been waiting for, dears. Another episode of the Shy Life podcast coming right up.
Oh, it's the Shy Life podcast.
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he's not all that shy, is right. Gee.
Blimey, Governor, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Excellent. 532.
Hello, campers. How are you?
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? I'm all...
sorry.
I heard a voice. This
Sounds if you was talking to you.
my goodness, that's never happened before. Listeners, how are you? It's lovely to hear from you. I have to get listeners. We've got a guest. You might have worked that out by now. Hello, Nick.
Hi. Yeah. Sorry. I must admit, I was the voice of the listeners, the collective voice of the listeners.
I didn't know that was going to
it was me all the time.
Well,
but
it's kind of.
I'm fine,
good.
thank you. Yes.
It's kind of ironic because this episode is going to be about fiction, but also fiction within fiction, and I'll explain what I mean when we come back after the theme music.
After the break.
Yes, let's run the theme music, and we'll join you again in a minute.
Darling, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Yes, but it's positive thinking. The highlights, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
You don't want Paul now, do you?
I'll go anywhere for a potato.
This particular episode of the Shy Life is a little more abstract than usual.
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. I think he has.
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Oh, I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life podcast. So we did recycling.
Yeah. I am strangely drawn to Yeti Uncle John's ankles as well.
Has the Shy Life podcast slowed down? I don't think so.
It's all gooey and meaty and yum.
And we're back.
Okay, we are recording.
Yes, we are. We're back. Yes. So let me try and think of help me out if I don't go.
Oh, well, I'll try.
If I don't quite. I think what we're going to be talking about this time, we're going to be talking about the films that we did together, which the ones that you wrote or we wrote together.
Yes.
But we're also going to talk about the fact that whilst we were making the films, I was making a film, but it wasn't a behind the scenes. Well, it was kind of behind the scenes, but it was also certain parts, so there were plots going on. So there were two layers of fiction within fiction.
You were multitasking, let's face it, before it was even trendy.
Well, you often hear actors say, "Oh, when I'm not, you're sitting around in the green room, not out for hours waiting for you to be called," and that's kind of, when I wasn't needed, that was primed. I had other actors hovering around. Some of them were very good friends who were part of the Sutton Park cast, and I could draw them in, well, I'll tell you about some of those things, but we'll also be telling you the stories of some of these films as well. And we've got clips. Nick's chosen some nice clips.
Yay! I've had a week off this week, so I've been able to have a little tinker.
Yes. And if I can find some Sutton Park clips of an example of what I was doing when I wasn't on set, then we'll also have those too. But we'll probably get Cuthbert to introduce those because he's best at doing that. So, yeah. Well, yes. And although I don't want to speak ill of Sniffy Martin, who also does the archives, he's not very good at precise dates, whereas Cuthbert tends to get the precise. But not that I'm putting Martin out of a job, but it's useful to have everybody working in the archives, different times. But anyway, so where should we start?
Well, I'm going sort of with my own personal history, rewinding a little bit. I was in right back to the 70s with me, I suppose. I've always wanted to be on, produce something that appeared on TV or as such. I used to pretend cameras, pretend crisp boxes were cameras, and I used to pretend I was broadcasting from my space hopper when I was a kid. But I would have loved to have had cine film and everything and video, and of course, I've been writing since I was 7 years old. And with the Magnet Editor, which we've mentioned before, and all these things, but it was only really seemed likely that it was going to come to fruition when you got your video camera in 1991. Now it's one of those great questions. If you had your time again, what would you change? What would you do? For me, it would be. I would bloody buy a video camera about the same time as you did. I would have played devil's advocate to you because the times over the next 8 or so years before I got a video camera where I had to borrow, I won't say beg, borrow, steal, I had to borrow one from yourselves or Elaine or anyone that was going, and I thought, well, it's stupid, yes, I was on minimum wage, but I wasn't without means, I was still living at home, and I really should have got, because then we would have had two, and we could have done loads, but you started out by doing the beaches videos, which I took part in, and I it did formulate that we could we could do some filmed of some kind of production, and I even kind of did a thing called The Inside Man, which you might even vaguely remember, which was a kind of a quasi a sort of anti-superhero. A guy who worked in the TV archives that could sort of transport himself into archive footage. And he, although he had these superpowers, he was a grumpy old sod, and he didn't want to do it, and he was kind of, you've got to do this as part of your job, otherwise you've got the boot. And I don't quite how we would have done it. I haven't the faintest idea, but
the listeners probably won't be 100% as interested. I can always chop this out anyway. But when we've been digitising. Have we come across the master tapes of? Because you know better than I do. Because there's so much I haven't even gone through yet. But do we have the master tapes of the stuff, the actual raw material of the Beaches sketches?
I'm sure that I in the back of my mind, I'm sure more must exist, because you're not the sort of person that throws stuff out.
No, they're probably there somewhere.
We have. Indeed, found some raw footage. Maybe it's more in the condensed area than we thought, and it's more on the tape. But yes, there has been some raw material from Beaches that has been recovered, and also it's all been digitalised.
Yeah. I should have had tapes of my Retaliators movies as well.
Yes,
somewhere.
Yeah,
they've been found.
I think it's all but I certainly stuff from that as early as that early has come to light, and it's been digitalised. Even just before the videos, because Elaine did videos of her own as well before she knew us, and Keith and I saw that, and I got very excited about the possibility of doing some teaming up and doing films with people, and we kind of tried to do that with series Blake Seven's. It ended up being a spoof. I think the intention originally was actually to do it as a sensible story, but it just, my philosophy with the film is you don't know what you can't do until you do it, and when you do it, you think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That was kind of completely outside our sphere of possibilities, and
because I wasn't doing anything behind the scenes on that because I didn't have a camera then. The funny thing is, when I was doing something part behind the scenes, our friend Andy was doing more traditional behind the scenes often, of the although my stuff is useful for behind the scenes point of view and a Sutton Park point of view, we also would have had Andy doing something which
and also I mean this was Andy did this. Andy very much came on board when we started doing the films regularly, whereas in the early 90s I think we were sort of batting around the idea of doing one. The Blake Seven thing came out a bit hokey, but it was even though it wasn't a story of lasting value, it was a good crack, and I think maybe and also you got to know David Aldridge, who then went on to do Retaliators a year later, which was a sort of spoof of the Avengers, which we both appeared in, and I think slowly but surely the want to do more certainly came up. I certainly had a ball with Series E. I mean, obviously, I had a bigger ball with things that were to come. And of course, then you got the camera. Then we got the invite to go to Tamworth to do the Retaliators, which was really the first time it opened my eyes as to what you could do with the sheer brass nerve of because he had these moving walls that killed people, and which were made of was like a cardboard thing with wallpaper covered in it, to brick wallpaper, and just being able to do cheeky little effects like that with and you've got the story that keeps it long. As long as you don't do something absolutely stupid that's visually impossible, it opened my. But the thing is, that was shot over 2 weeks with 4 potential stories. And I did 1 week. Unfortunately, I don't think it was the intention to do it 2 weeks, but I was unable to do the week that Elaine was, and we were playing sidekicks. And I think with that, and by that time you were well on the way with Beaches and all the sketches, things that you were doing, including additional things for Retaliators with your character.
One of my few times where I actually was being behind the scenes, I did a quite big documentary of the 2 weeks of making the Retaliators, including all of them, they're having fun outside of filming. So that's quite a nice document in itself.
Yes, and it was a nice setup. At the time, with hindsight, it would have been better if Elaine and I had been together. But at the time, we had been in Item during 91 and we'd split up. Now we're still good friends, and we're still good friends to this day, but maybe I was a little bit, when we did Retaliators, maybe I was still a little bit raw to be working alongside her. I know that sounds a bit silly with hindsight, but anyway, all the techniques he used and all the sort of little things with just the sort of basic equipment, I think was a great inspiration to me, and I really I suppose the only thing that niggled me is I really wanted to do one of my own and really get started. And meanwhile, our first collaboration together, I had to say Sutton Park started here. I don't know if you insert Sutton Park.
Well, a couple of things I wanted to say was that because I went to university very close to David, I kind of the reason I really started doing Sutton Park was that Sutton Park was a sketch, a sort of spoof soap on the sketch show of Beaches. But in the back of my mind, I realised that I was going to be at university, and I'm not the sort of person necessarily where I don't like join in. I mean, I wouldn't have just thrown myself into a big group of strangers. I like to pick the ones that I think, he's somebody I click with. He's somebody I tend to like. It's different with our Doctor Who group because we all have the Doctor Who in common. But I didn't go in halls of residence, so I wasn't going to be in that situation. I was going to be in a house by myself. So I you don't go, when you go to university, you don't have lectures every single day. You might have a couple of days off. There's always going to be time to do stuff. So I deliberately lived close to this real place called Sutton Park, and in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, I'll somehow, I didn't realise I was going to be making as many as I did, and I also hoped that David would take part more than he did. And I also had problems with my video camera around that time. but it was, Sutton Park was kind of this is the little project to do. This is something to get me out of the house when I'm not at university, and it gives me, a bit of something creative.
That's the other thing. I mean, obviously. We're quite the viewers, listeners are quite familiar with Sutton Park, but I wonder how many of them, perhaps the more floating ones, realise that Sutton Park actually really does exist. It's a real place.
Yeah. And in fact, I was due to be going back a month or two ago. Had we not been in lockdown, because listeners, we're still in lockdown.
We are.
On and off. Mostly we are, and. So I haven't been to the Royal Sutton Park for about 10 years, and he'll be at least 11 before I do at this rate. But
it's depressing, isn't it?
But yes, so with our first project, that was a Sutton Park related project. I don't remember perhaps doing. I'm sure I did do stuff behind the scenes, but no, I don't think I did not as much as I did in some of them.
No, I think it was actually physically impossible. Going back a little bit, in 1992, when you were getting used to the camera, at the same time, you had started, because you always had a project on the go with writing, and you were still, although the writing sort of tailed off for a wee while because of the filming, you were still writing very much at the beginning of 92. And of course the poems later on, and you started an ongoing story called Old Graham Wrinkly, which I contributed 2 chapters to. It was like a prose book, which we passed around each other. Harry Fulton did some, Robin Archer did some, and Lee Freeman, who's very familiar to Sutton Park watch viewers as and
I feel like that was that was the main people. We all did about 2 episodes each or something like that.
We did.
Because I think, didn't Lee do his back-to-back? His episodes were back-to-back or something, so we didn't, because he was the one that was furthest away. Yeah.
But I think what happened there, I thoroughly enjoyed it, because I was, at the time, I go through periods where I'm really kind of chewing at the bit to get a new project done. About 5 years ago, I was in the same boat. I was kind of in between projects, or I was involved in certain things which were taking a very long time, like my Magnet Memories book. But the thing is, back then, I was only doing One Life after a year, really. And I'd been in a quite involved relationship at the time, and so it was a real joy to get my teeth into this thing. And you created the characters of Bill and Bernie Old, who were the sort of lead investigative characters in it. And you said afterwards, that was good. Should we do another one together? Just the 2 of us, which of course I said yes to. And now with that,
was it partly because there was still like half of the book that we were writing in, there was still a nice chunk. I think it was almost like let's finish the story off. Let's do another story at the back of the book.
Yeah, Old Graham Wrinkly had taken up exactly half the book, and I think the idea was let's fill the other half with the sequel story. Although it wasn't a sequel, because just another adventure with Bill and Bernie, and of course at the time Sutton Park was a rising star, and you could have married the 2 together and packed them off to Sutton Park. Now at the time, I think you had serialised Old Graham Wrinkly because we were doing audio messages to each other and to Elaine. In fact, I didn't stop doing audio messages to Elaine until about 2007, and I think she had said to you after, I think, 1 or 2 chapters, why don't we do a film of this? Because I think there was, it was still very much a thing. And I said, that's a great idea, but you've got spontaneous internal combustion by chapter 2. I think CGI wasn't, I don't think it was in its infancy at that point. I don't think it would have been a very good idea to have attempted it.
And none of our actors were prepared to spontaneously combust for the project.
No, none of our actors were prepared to crash and burn. But we were on the phone, and you said, and I said, she had said this to me, and it's not actually physically possible, because we did some pretty spectacular things in that particular story, and you said, well, why don't we write one that we can do? And instantly I thought, ooh, and here we are with our writing pens. You did a chapter, I did a chapter. I mean, if we did it now, as we know, a sort of fast forwarding to 2016, we did a similar, you write one, I write one, you write one. And of course, the internet, and of course, not the need not to actually, we put it into, with our second story, which we just finished, A Woman of No Reason, Woman of All Four Reasons, sort of. It was a script to start with, so you didn't need to adapt it, but we were adapting it as we went as well. So you adapted your bit, I adapted mine, but of course no internet, no phones or anything. I think when there was a bit of script where I felt, it's kind of not really, that's not quite what I meant. And you had gone on your a long walk to Wales with Andrew Reid, and you were uncontactable for 10 days. So I go, ooh. And I mean, we did set ourselves a very tight budget, but we didn't know what the norm was. Nobody knew what the norm was, or what we could achieve in a certain amount of time. We gathered together. My then girlfriend was going to do it, but we split up. So Lisa Parker, who was very known to people around the archives now, was a pen friend of mine at the time, and I said, do you want to do this? And she learnt the script in 2 weeks, which was still I think we were still working on it about 2 weeks before, that was 1993. Yeah,
this is the project with the legendary when we asked for whether we could film there, they said, are people going to keep their clothes on? I think we've mentioned that on the show before.
I mean, I wanted to do it as best I could, as best we could, as best, allowing for the limitations that we had. Now, with that, I wanted to film at Pepperbox Hill, because I'd always been a bit obsessed with it, and also we'd done Sutton Park up there. I think we did many recces, and you will find, if you ever come across the episodes with the dinosaurs, that was basically, a lot of that was Sutton Park recce. So there's some footage that exists of recce, the recce stuff, and I
expect in that case, rather than doing filming during the production, because we were using the camera for the production, it was probably things like the recce where we did Sutton Park stuff.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't because I mean, I suppose we came across with two approaches. I mean, you kind of doing it, sort of. We were all learning a script and everything, but I suppose I kind of sort of was keen on getting everybody knowing what they were doing, and there were times when we slightly differed about what should go and what should stay if our back was against the wall, but it was an interesting exercise, and at the end, because I played. The other thing I didn't want to really do is be in it, because I kind of wanted to be behind the camera more, but Harry was going to be a character in it, and he went to he was booked to go to Rome around that time, so we got in a friend of Andrew Candish's, who was playing one of the parts in it, who'd been one of the old gang from Rayface Shift, and he knew a person called Gareth Brownbill, who I'd seen in West Side Story a couple of years before, and thought was very, very good actor. And I felt, because this was deliberate, it was sort of like an advert. I think I sort of put in the idea of this advert that was being filmed, and it had been being refilmed since the 70s, because these people were in a kind of like, not quite a time loop, but in a sort of Groundhog Day thing. And I got the idea from that, was when Tina, my then girlfriend, and I were on Bristol Templemead Station, and we walked smack into a crew that were filming an advert. And I thought, well, what if this advert becomes very famous, and sort of we were almost walking smack into this piece of history, and we thought that's what gave me the idea of them, Bill and Bernie kind of boom, and there was some various, and it was set in 1986. I think that was your idea. I like 1986 anyway. It was a good year, so I was very happy to do that.
I think the main thing that we probably didn't need to have worried about was that we got because Bill and Bernie were supposed to be sort of retirement age, and so you've got two people in their 20s play, and I don't think we needed. If we did it now, you just wouldn't care about that. You'd just have it about a couple who were in the part. They didn't need to be old just because they were old in the story.
I don't think for one moment I actually kind of stopped and thought, are we going to do some makeup on this? Because it was just we had set the bar so high on this, our first one. There was this, and I was wanting definitely to get some quite high. It was quite high concept really, because it wasn't as such. I've always considered it a Bill and Bernie story with Sutton Park in it, rather than a Sutton Park film as such, because it wasn't really representative of the series. You didn't have plastic monsters. You didn't.
No, you could watch it without knowing anything about it.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I really do think it was that way round. We didn't age. We didn't even try to age us up, did we? We didn't stick it. In the end, we didn't stick anything in. There was no point with doing that, really. Yeah, I think it was more of a case of just there was so many other things to think about. I think we referenced them as old from beginning to end, but and that because we were so busy putting the production together, we didn't really kind of even stop to think about that.
It reminds me of we didn't do this, but Harry, Robin, and I. It wasn't even. It was for Beaches or like a mini spoof horror film we did called Semi-Detached House of Hell.
Oh, I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah, and there's a deliberately silly bit where I'm supposed to be so scared my hair turned white, and all I did was go in and put loads of talcum powder in my hair, and partly because it's windy and partly it was part of the joke that I was going, my hair's turned white, and there were billows of talcum powder coming out of my hair.
Yeah. No,
that was very much channeling a sort of Acorn Antiques aesthetic of tackiness.
I think the main problem, not my problem. The main difference between us is, I think I saw it as a huge opportunity to do something, although with lots of humour in it, that could be potentially quite dramatic and high concept and things like that. So maybe I had a bit of more of an arty-farty kind of agenda with it, and when you're setting the bar that high, you learn the hard way. There's no two ways about it.
You have a different background with your acting, in that you've done or formal acting on stage. Whereas I've done a lot of acting, but it's mostly ad lib or learning your scripts. So I have learnt scripts, but then you've got you already had done a lot of that, so you had that to bring to it as well.
Although I think I was a bit hamstrung by the fact that it was actually I didn't actually turn in a very good performance because my mind was always on the production, what we're going to do next. So I don't feel that I did a very good job on that, and that Gareth came in. I think one of the reasons Gareth kind of stayed on and did some more films with us is he was such a good sport. He really did play the game, and he was prepared. And you do have a lot of hanging around. If you've got a scripted thing and it's going to you've got to do it in a certain amount of time. There is a lot of things to get in there, and the upshot was we did run out of time, and certain things were compromised. But I can't begin to tell you how into it I was, and how I got such a buzz of creating this thing, sort of we created these characters and suddenly Bush, our friends are helping them bring them to life, and it was a laugh as well. But I think at the end, when we were relieved about getting it all in the can, but again, we came away from the production with different kind of ideas. Different ideas of it, not so much stylistically as I felt. We'd kind of trodden on each other's toes. We'd trodden on other people's toes. Maybe the cost to people's kind of well-being or cost to people, sort of goodwill might be too high. So I really did come away with that thinking that was going to be it. That was a one-off. And it wasn't going to be done again. And when I think we were in at your home, your parents' place, putting it all together, and you kind of very upbeat. And there's, right, what should we do next? And I thought, oh right, I thought everybody had kind of been a bit drained by this and a bit fraught by this. So, and I thought, well, if there's another one, you really want to do another one? Yeah, I'm kind of, let's do it.
The thing is, by the summer of '93, I'd kind of got over. Well, there was still one more hitch to come with my technology. But I had problems with my video camera in the autumn of '93, where I needed to get a new charger, basically. But some of these things weren't quite. There was nobody there saying, "Oh, that's what the problem is. This is what you do." There was no Amazon. I didn't know where I got a replacement charger from. But I had problems earlier in the year, and the summer was the kind of. Well, things are. In the beginning of the summer, when I was doing that walk you mentioned, that was around episode 100, and then I think Prison happened somewhere between 100 and 150, and then by 150,
that was the film about prisoners. You didn't go to prison.
No, yes, that's right. Sorry, I'm not admitting to something. Sorry, listeners. This is just our friendship slang for our productions. Yes. And then by perhaps August '93, that's when I went to Jersey and the Channel Islands with my brother and did a really lot of. That was one of the first holidays I had where I had like a location, and we were doing stuff like I was able to do stuff like making it look like Graham had been washed out to sea, and we even did a fight scene where he was hypnotised or I was hypnotised, and I was trying to drown him in a swimming pool, and I was taking the video camera in the swimming pool, obviously not underwater, but so I was really in the full swing of what things were finally working, and this is what I can do with Sutton Park. So I was probably generating quite a lot of episodes. So equally so. I probably didn't occur to me that we wouldn't do another scripted one as I was really into filming.
Yeah,
all sorts.
I suppose also I know that I was into it, but I knew that you were busy on Sutton Park, and I really wasn't quite sure how committed is the word? How much this floated your boat really, as in compared to Sutton Park. Obviously, it wasn't as satisfying as Sutton Park for you because, of course, that gave you, there wasn't any kind of restrictions. But no, I wasn't 100% sure how you felt about it really. But it was your idea to do another one. So yeah, I said, oh yes, please, yeah. And I said,
although the ones that I did in '94 were ad lib ones because I was working. I was at university, but I was also working back in Salisbury. But
yeah.
I wasn't really in a writing. So I was writing essays and doing.
That's right.
So my two were ad libbed and your two were scripted, and they took a life of their own anyway.
That's right. I think the other thing, if I had my time again, was to actually get some kind of a computer, because I mean that would because you had the computer at the time. The trouble is, I think because there were two things I was because I think. That's right. I remember now. With the second film we did was an anthology. We eventually called Traitors of Twilight Reality, where 4 different stories, and you wrote 2, and I wrote. Well, you did 2, and I did 2. That was the idea. And I'd gone to the loo, I remember, during editing, and you came back and said, whilst you've been away, I had a great idea. Let's do a sort of Tales from the Crypt kind of Vault of Horror kind of anthology thing. And I remember very much you kind of said, go to the toilet again, I might have another idea. Brilliant. And I sort of went away and had a little think, and I said there's two things here. One is, if we're going to do another one, can we do it not just on the basis of Sutton Park? Can we do it sort of so we can do it anywhere, not particularly linked to Sutton Park? And the other thing was a sort of greater communication as far as the scripts went, but that was academic in the end, because I went away and wrote two. That's An Evil Trophy and Tide of Freedom, and also I wanted to get other directors in. Although ironically, one of my films was filmed whilst I was in Birmingham, and it actually has a scene in the real Sutton Park. Yes. Which I'm not sure the Prisoner in the Sun had any real footage. Indeed, when I was writing my bits for Prisoner in the Sun, I'd never been to Sutton Park. I'd never actually been myself. I didn't go for another 2 years. There's a scene in Keepsake, which is the story I did, which Kerry, my university friend, was in. But there's a cameo from our friend Phil where he drops the keepsake, and that was filmed in Sutton Park during another Sutton. We would have been in the park. We would have been in the park filming Sutton Park, and I would have said to Phil, "Oh, I also need you to do this little scene for this other thing I'm doing." Do you know? I don't think I've ever known that. I had no idea Sutton Park, and we've done the commentaries for the DVDs of that. But I think with that, so we had two different stories to work on. Again, you were saying that you didn't really have a great deal of time, so yours were more ad-libbed. But they were kind of planned ad-lib, weren't they? Yeah. Keepsake was, Kerry was quite... He was quite directorially minded, wasn't he? Yes, he was, yeah. And he was in it and you were in it, and that was the first one to be shot. We then I did a story called Evil Trophy, which is all about a council worker who finds himself almost hexed by the local sort of Tory bigwig. You don't actually say the Tory, but it was very much based on the kind of politicians that were in Salisbury that were very hoity-toity and with the flunkies. And I wanted to set it in London because to sort of get away, to get a contrast as the rural setting we had for Prisoner in the Sun. And Andy was your pen friend Andy got to know me then and watched Prisoner in the Sun and wanted to get involved. So even though Andrew Candish was pestering me to direct, I knew that sometimes his temperament could rub people up the wrong way, but I eventually worn down, and I gave him Evil Trophy to direct. And also it was based a little bit on my mum, because my mum's very keen on gardening, and she her allotment, she got thrown out of her allotment because she was doing organic gardening, which was interpreted by the powers that be as a neglect, and it wasn't. It was as particularly, and you hardly ever saw my mum angry or upset, but she was really quite. And I felt I drew from that kind of a little bit from we had a bit of I because of the Vault of Horror kind of link. I made it very supernatural. But then again, I thought, it'd be even better if we had a sort of more basic kind of human story for my next one, because I didn't know what the next one was going to be. And I would have written that at the beginning of 94, and towards the end of 93, I got the idea of doing a story set by the seaside. When we went, I think you and I went to Weymouth, actually. I think you might have been with me at the time. And that became, what I originally called Orphan, but then I gave that to Keith Musselwhite, and he for direct, and we kind of kicked the ball about, and we drew the name out of a hat. We drew several names into a hat. By chance, Tide of Freedom was pulled out, and that was we got. Again, it was the same cast, only redressed, but I got one of because. The girl there was a character called Adele, who I'd had to recast 3 times. We were going to originally use my friend Rebecca Hayne, which she kind of and then got cold feet. Then I rewrote the part as a kid's sister because my friend Tracy's little sister was going to do it, and she dropped out. And then Lisa's niece was going to do it, and she dropped out. So in the end, I got one of the Studio Theatre people called Nikki Jones to do the part, and she was a bit too old to play this kind of junior character, because she was actually the character was supposed to be considerably younger than Lisa's character, but she wasn't. She was actually older than Lisa. So it sort of unravelled a little bit in that respect. And also Keith and I mean, we have a very long and close friendship. But I think the fact that he's a great perfectionist, and I think he did want to do a good job. But I kind of, if there were points where my story wasn't perhaps coming across, I would sort of try to explain, and I think sometimes that explanation came across as interference, and we butted heads a little bit. And we did a massive day. There was on the Sunday, because we did it in about the main part in about 3 days, and there was a massive day we did. We did about 12 hours or something, and on the beach, and the light was going, and we were all getting on each other's nerves, and it was a bit like Trophy when because Andrew Candish wanted to do take after take of things, and we were running out of time, and time was always the thief when it was the scripted stuff, and Keith hadn't put the script thing together, and years later we remade it because Toby and Lisa asked me to remake it because from the technical point of view and from the writing point of view, but Keith was a little bit upset about that. But we've since worked on the DVD of the original, and we've kind of patched up a few things. But yeah, Tide of Freedom.
I want to ask you in a minute but before we get to the next stage of the episode, I'll just mention what my other story was.
Please do. Yeah.
But then there's something that I think I want you to take the lead on, because Nick's done some preparation for us listeners. So, saying how you didn't realise that going back to Keepsake, you didn't realise that scene was in Sutton Park.
No.
Well, a lot of the rest of it was done outside outside the house where I was living, and some of it in Kerry's bedroom and the lake outside of our house. And then the other one we did, which you were involved in, Curious, we did in Salisbury, and then with a little bit with my brother whilst I was on holiday in Wales. There's a scene with my brother. Or was that in Curious? No, that's in Curious. That's in Keepsake.
That's in Keepsake. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a bit. So yes. So my brother's in Keepsake, and that scene was done whilst we were in Wales, in a house with a big garden. So it looks quite grand. We got a big budget for this one scene, but Curious, we did all around Salisbury, and you, Harry, and Robin, and I were.
Yes, and I tell you, from a point of view of someone who had sort of not, done the scripts and things like that. Although I don't regret scripting, and it was nice to have that structure. It was actually quite nice to come on to Curious and actually work with something where I was actually acting, because I actually find acting more relaxing than I do production. And so so coming on, and also I was playing quite a sinister character, which was great, because I don't get even baddies or semi-baddies or disgruntlies, not so much as a sort of there's no tea in my coffees, and so it was nice to play this kind of sinister character, and because production on Tide had been a bit turbulent, and we didn't know whether we were getting Nikki back, and we were going to have, or Nikki at all at one point, and we were going to have to possibly re-record it with a new character called Dave the Bouncer. So I grew a beard, a very large beard, probably the biggest beard I've had since late last year, And I thought, oh yes, we'll play this, and I think I actually looked rather good in Curious, because I kind of finished work. I got into a suit. We went to, and it wasn't. I have to say, it wasn't total ad lib, because it was rehearsed ad lib. It was very much. Yeah. We rehearsed things and things like that. But
that's how I used to do when I was at school, and we did our assemblies where we did dramas. It was always rehearsed ad lib.
I have fond memories of Curious, because obviously, although writing is my first love, acting I really love, and it was nice working with the sort of the dynamic duo of the earliest Sutton Parks, because you've got Harry and Robin. And of course, Harry I've known since all his life, but it was nice to be able to work with them on a one-to-one basis. And it was Robin was playing the lead character, and we had a scene where he was recruiting me. No, I was recruiting him to look for my cousin in it, who was played by Harry. And of course, I don't quite have your capacity for ad-libbing, so we were ad-libbing some of the dialogue, so we knew pretty well what we were going to say. And I was trying to convey to Robin's character that I was looking for this, and I was very worried about him, and he hadn't appeared for a while. And I said, I've been very worried about him. He's been disappearing for the last few weeks. And the next thing I know, we looked to one side, and you were, Harry, are on the ground laughing, because you could just imagine Harry kind of slowly fading away like the Invisible Man. Yeah.
Is that the only time that our friend, who listeners would have heard in Sutton Park clips, is that the only time that Lee was in one of our more scripted or more ad-lib, film? Because he played I forgot that he played a character in that.
He did.
Is that the only time he ever appeared in anything you did?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually. Obviously, I've appeared with him many times in Sutton Park, but I didn't actually have a scene with him. But he was really, really good. And of course, I wanted him a year later for another production, which I'll get to later. And because he was actually. He was one of these people that wanted to get to know you first before he worked with you. He wanted to get he'd get the measure of you and kind of see if you were kind of his kind of person, you were going to work well with him. So I regret not being able to. The circumstances weren't quite right for me to, but I did try and get him for one of mine. But yeah, he was in that, and there was the last scene was done in my bedroom. And I think, again, I was waffling on about this revelation at the end. And I said, haven't you noticed it's the full moon? And I point at the full moon, and it looks like I'm pointing at Harry. And you imagine Harry kind of mooning.
It was the most blood, because right at the end, you're basically you're both about to eat Robin, basically.
Yeah. He was very tough.
Most bloodless.
Most bloodless.
PG.
Bloodless werewolf film ever. Yeah. It was enormous. I would have. I still. The first opportunity. I love getting involved in things like that still, because it was, as I say, it was a nice thing to do, especially after the. Sort of rather traumatic, not traumatic, but the rather fraught moments of the other scripting, the scripted ones. So yeah, it was absolutely cool to do.
What I was up to behind the scenes of your two, Keith had been playing pretty much just Keith.
That's right.
In Sutton Park, but during the recording behind the scenes of Evil Trophy, he was. Bumped off by one of the baddies, and then by the time we did Tide, we'd come up with this plot line where Elaine missed him so much that it brought him back into reality, even though he wasn't there anymore. So he then became a character that everyone was able to interact with, but it was all Elaine's imagination. And I think eventually she left the show for a bit to go to this imaginary world so she could be with him full time.
Oh, Blair! It's quite a sweet. When you think about it, it's quite a sweet plot line, really. And it was out of necessity, but it was actually quite as
But I remember going. You know, we had to go down like some dark alley in the centre of London whilst we were doing. And I had this glowing stick which was supposed to belong to Katrina Hortensia or somebody, and that sort of murdered poor old Keith. And I think that's the first time where I kind of realised, you can get up to all sorts of interesting things with, behind the scenes. And I think it might have even been Evil Trophy 2, where we were doing something about that supposedly your cast were going on strike for some reason.
I think it also, I mean, that was almost a case of life imitating art, because I think my cast very nearly, I mean, with the cast, I wasn't directing them, but they very nearly did go on the strike because they weren't particularly happy about the way things were going. So it was actually quite a prescient sort of one to plot line to do.
I think in one of the later films, we did something about the puppets and the Horner and various different characters from Sutton Park. They were protesting because you weren't writing roles for non-human actors.
Yeah, I watched that at quite some length when I was taping it. I thought, they got a bloody nerve, hasn't they? They're in every kind of episode where there's behind the scenes.
Yeah, they didn't, but they wanted to be in the real production. But
real stuff,
they wanted to be on the big screen.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about the big screen, I remember you were talking about sort of firsts when you were recording. It was a thrill to do a film and make from page to screen. And I remember it being a bit sort of about 10 years ago, or maybe slightly more recently. The first person I knew who could have YouTube, so I on a normal TV, which is now here. I mean, we have that as well. I think it's relatively standard. You can get YouTube on your TV, so the first time, so I already had videos on YouTube, of my poems and things. But the first time I was able to sit back in a sofa and watch on my YouTube videos on a big TV screen was a bit of a thrill.
Absolutely. I mean, I that's something I didn't really grasp. Get the. I think it's because we only sort of had preview in the last sort of few years. But I think I probably want to see my own kind of work, but not necessarily myself.
So, listeners, the next part of this episode, because we may have more to say in a future date, but I'm aware that time is getting on a bit. But Nick has put together a load of different clips, and I wondered, and as we're going to play them, I wondered whether you could sort of briefly talk about the films they come from and what we're going to be hearing. Yes,
I mean, three. Some of the ones that I've already mentioned have already are on there. We have from Sutton Park Prison in the Sun, what I call our sort of mixed up love child. that I regard it as our sort of adolescent love child. As you as Bill Eld, as we have said, without makeup. Andrew Candish as an ageing actor called Les Craddock, who's been in a not quite a time, but as I say, a Groundhog Day spell that Sutton Park's cast him under to be entertained, and he's constantly trying to get this washing powder advert sorted, and he's got Elaine who's playing Jemima. She's the starlet in it, and I'm in it, and you've just confronted him with the fact that this isn't 1976, it's 1986, and all these sort of things have happened in the world since he's been on ice, or in heat, as it were, because of course it's the hot summer of 76. So yes, you're there with your record collection, which I think it was one of these crazy ideas. I think I was writing that scene with. Obviously, you kind of contributed to that bit, but it was sort of like the central bit I was writing, and you were sort of. I was kind of. I think we just got, in order to demonstrate to him that time has changed, we simply got out this record collection, which presumably Bill sort of carried it around with him ad nauseum. That lovely idea. I mean, it's just completely daft, but.
Yes, I always carry these around with me. My private record collection. Look at the dates here. On this one, 1986. See, some of these people here, they'll be new people to you, but some of these are quite old, old. But it's 1986. I mean, if you think I'm lying to you, you just wander out this park, and everyone else will lie to you. Ronald Reagan is U.S. President. Margaret Thatcher is British Prime Minister. And much as I hate to say it, Elvis and John Lennon have long since passed away. And Tom Baker isn't Doctor Who anymore. What have I done?
I only use this from time to time because my concentration sometimes goes, but 10 years? It's not possible. And Elvis dead.
And Margaret Thatcher Prime Minister. And ABBA disbanded.
ABBA disbanded when?
1982, God rest their soul.
Well, you made out somehow. Lived on minimal resources, I suppose.
Some people call it the good life.
It's like one of those soldiers you hear of, hopelessly lost in the jungle, unaware that the war is over.
Well, I suppose if you didn't continually hypnotise these people, someone did. Made all your dreams come true. On an ending summer holiday. Well, rumour had it you'd become a Buddhist naturalist that got into amateur dramatics and ping pong. I suppose that's how you got into the filming business, was it?
So yeah, that's the one from Sutton Park Prison in the Sun, which of course was the one that, in a sense, sort of hit it all off and got us going. Evil Trophy. What did I do with Evil Trophy? I can't remember what. Oh yes, yes. This character Colin Talbot, played by Andy, who was the lead hero, and was the main sort of one of the protagonists in this kind of denouement. This kind of four characters in a place, which was filmed in the After Everything Else in the Barbican. But yes, this is a scene where he's in the shed with his friends, one of which is yourself. In this time in the guise of Jim Fryer, one of his friends who'd just been chucked out, and you're all trying to work out how this character Ava Burgess has got a spell on you. So
all this amounts to two words: Ava Burgess. Molly says I'm having an affair with a woman. I hate affair. Jim, you may laugh. We've never got entangled in local politics. Count yourself lucky, because when you do, when it gets personal, some would say I'm waging a one-man war against her.
But why make it one? What about Jim and Trev and Simon and everyone?
Trev doesn't bother coming anymore. He got a job with the council. If you can't beat them, suck up to them.
Look, you always blame Burgess for these things. Do you really think she took Trev from us and chucked Jim out?
Oh yes, it's the Ava Burgess pattern. Divide and conquer.
Conquer who?
It almost feels like me. The more I stand up to her, the more she tries to run this borough to her plans, the more of our soldiers she knocks down. There is a fierce resolve in me to fight.
With there's two actually from the Tide of Freedom we did in 1994 and the Tide of Freedom we did in 1993. It's the same scene, but I thought it might be interesting for folks to see, because you're in it both times. But the character Adele has gone from an adolescent to a middle-aged teacher, alcoholic teacher, because
I've gone from a Blur t-shirt wearing youth to a slightly wet leather jacket wearing less.
I think we would. I think in your case we were just trying to brazen it out, but we were still the same age. I think it was a touch of the Bill and Bernie's. I think we were just trying to pretend that you were still the same age. Andy, I think, had aged even more than yourself, but. No, so that was So you've got there's back. You could sort of do those back to back, and they would be the ones. We obviously there's lots we rewrote. So that's another sort of aspect of that, which was nice. It was interesting to go back and actually make good all the things you didn't like the first time round. From your own script. Which it was liberating. It was. Yes, it was. It did. There were certain people who were upset about me doing it, and I'm actually genuinely sorry that they were, because there was no harm intended. In Keith's case, I just assumed that he wasn't interested in the project anymore, and I fancied having another crack at my script and really kind of shaking it up. So anyway, there's the two there. So the girl Adele has been thrown out of home by her mum, and you're comforting her, and the alcoholic middle-aged Adele has been thrown out of for drinking too much by her landlady. So there was the two aspects of that.
Have you ever woken up one day and said to yourself, that's it, I'm on my own?
Are you?
It all started with that stupid can of hair dye for Franz. My mother went berserk. We argued and argued and argued about everything. Well, Dave was at home, as you probably gathered, so he joined in. And now if I'm desperate, with promises of this, promises of that, I'm out. Fending for myself at the age of 17.
But they can't do that, your exams.
Exactly. That's why I say I'm on my own. I mean, she's had enough, I've had enough. She's got Dave and I've got Fran and Junod. And they've been born.
But Fran, she thought...
I know. She wanted me to have exams and all that. But I've had to change, haven't I?
There you are, Floozy. We've been looking for you. What's wrong?
Mary, who else? This time it's bad news. So I went to see Andre, like I said I would. Got my tattoo, save his Franz. Look.
You don't have to.
Andre likes to drink. Did you know that? So we drank, and I went home drunk. Mary was waiting for me, the old bag. She slung me out, Stu.
Well, what about college? You've got to get it sorted.
I can't go back. Well, what does it matter now? I'm going to go on the road with you lot. To be really free, as Fran would say.
When will you tell her?
Soon, in my own way. She had high hope for my exams, my ticket back to teaching and a decent life.
There's Rosie Lenz, which was... this is sort of going off into the ones we did after Traitors, which you were in. I think you played a character in there, and it was more of a talking. You came up with the idea of doing some monologues, which are like a Talking Heads type thing. We've since found your monologues. At the time we were doing them, I think you'd lost them again. You couldn't find them and didn't know where they were in terms of. But they've since been scanned and they're fully recorded. Which is a shame. It would have been fun to have had yours recorded at the same time. I did Rosie Lenz, which was a monologue. I chickened out, although there's direct contact with the audience, I chickened out of doing the other two as direct monologues. I did Inquisition in Law, which was more a sort of a quirky character piece, which I think I should have done as a monologue, actually, and stuck to the original plan. Rosie Lenz was written for a lady called Louise Levy, who's now a professional actress, charming girl and very good actress. And I wanted her for the lead. And there's the Old School Lie, which was a sort of it's a bit of a cheat because it is a monologue of such, because the central character, it's actually quite a good idea. It's almost as accident, really. The central character, who's this sort of failed songwriter, kind of addresses the audience completely, doesn't actually address the other characters at all. The other characters just move across him, talk to him and everything. He takes no notice of them. He only talks to the because he's quite a selfish character, he just takes no notice of them and causes a bit of chaos and just talks to the audience. And the one time he talks to another character out of sheer despair, that character doesn't talk to him. So there's a bit with the Rosie Lenz, where she's talking about the lead character Bridget Laird is talking about her friends who are encouraging her to go out and find a love life and just find a life generally.
I asked my friend Caroline, what shall I do? She said, first you get a brick, so I did, and then you get a ticket to Blackstone City, so I did, and then you get a man. How, Cass? I said. Pick one off the streets. Love is a multiple choice question with 100 answers and only one that's correct. I looked her in the eye. You're telling me to force that choice. Well, Kaz is not a woman of commitment. Love, she laughed, is Russian roulette with all the bullets in bridge. You don't want to get tied to one man, you just want to score. Score. I can't do that.
Inquisition, or I don't have I didn't put anything from because we couldn't have everything.
No, I mean, I remember. I don't remember the exact plot that I was doing when we did Old School Live, but I do remember. We got to film in a school, a real school,
yes,
because Andy was the janitor there.
That's right, at the Royal Masonic School. Yes, he was, and. Because you did quite involved with that and Rosie Lenz. You actually hip hop between the two. You did the timelines. You changed a little bit because you did one where the one that was because you were coming up to the 1000th episode of some part. You did one where it looked like the film that was shot before was actually shot later. So that was quite fun. But
to have I was always about with Sutton Park. I've always been about location. The location generates the plot lines.
Absolutely.
Often, or maybe a prop generates the plot line. Though Troby turns up with a box full of computer circuits. Oh wow! What can we make this? What can we say this is?
Yeah, exactly.
And that you get a whole day worth of filming just because Troby's bought this old computer or something that glows or something that generates.
And he was terribly good at producing those. I remember because he played a doctor in the Tide of Freedom, and he turned up on the day. Although he didn't use it, he turned up on the day with a blood transfusion coat covered in blood, and which was quite nice. But no, so with Rosie Lenz there was. I think you were doing. You were involved because the camera was there, and you were an extra, I believe. And you were also. There was an awful lot involved in that because we were using your dad's camera, and there was effects, and also with that, there was you did a lot of Sutton Park with that. Because it was in your home turf as well. So that was great.
I also remember. I keep going back to Old School Live, but I remember filming on a canal path.
That's right. Yeah.
But that was the time when I think I was introducing a lot of these puppet characters into Sutton Park, and I wanted to get sort of stills of them, which I could. I don't know where I was going to put them, but it was always but back then, whatever. I didn't have the greatest camera in the world anyway, but you didn't know what you were going to, whether you were it was even going to focus properly on the thing you were sticking in front of until you sent it off to the chemist to get it developed. Whereas now, you just take a photo and it'd be, oh, that's great. Oh, I'll take another one. But back then, you didn't know whether any of it was going to be coming out.
Absolutely. I mean, it was quite disconcerting, really, wasn't it? But no, Old School Lie, as you say, Andy had the. That was based on a Tales of the Unexpected I sort of developed years before, which was actually a period piece. And at the time, I realised when going back to it, I thought it would be silly to do a period piece. We just wouldn't get away with it. And I brought it up to date. And the character was supposed to live with his elderly father. And as we didn't really have any elderly actors, male actors, I divided them into a wife and a mistress who actually worked in conjunction with each other. They were fully aware of each other, and they worked in conjunction to get this idle central character. And now Lee was my number one target for the sort of, for want of a word, the villain of the piece. The lead character, Harry's old nemesis, Mick St. John, who was kind of like taking great delight. He was now working for the school and taking great delight in sort of humiliating him and sort of saying, you've got to take this job, otherwise you're not going to work again. And it was all quite light comedy, but I offered Lee the part, and he said, well, I don't really I'd rather concentrate, because I think you turned down the part for him. He said, no, you won't do it. And I think, sure enough, I had to talk to him later on after Old School Eye, and he said, no, I wouldn't have done it, because if it was sort of just you and me, and because he was, he was terribly nice and terribly supportive to work with, but he would have made a very aggressive Mick St. John, and whereas I think I saw him as a grammar school toff in the end, because I cast Peter Ewing, who was this very much kind of chiselled, heroic kind of looking chap who had done loads of Shakespeare, and he had never played villains, and he was getting a bit fed up with playing goodies. And I thought, well, let's give him a nasty character, and he was very good. We ran riot round the school, because it was in their time they've done Indiana Jones and Supergirl and loads of things at that school, that location. It's famous. In fact, I think I saw something the other day on telly that looked suspiciously like it. It was a joy to do, and in a way I did a U. Because I actually was, I was so, I knew the scenes I had, and I had the actors with me, but I didn't know the locations. So we had one shot to go in there that afternoon, and so I went from beginning to end at the school and shot loads of extra stuff, and kind of thought, right, well, we can do this here and that here, and you were spoiled for choice. It really was.
It was a pretty big school. It wasn't
enormous.
like a little. It was an enormous school, loads of classrooms.
Yeah, and of course that was great for Sutton Park as well, because you instantly had that that aspect to it.
I must go back and see what I did.
Yeah, please do. I mean, it was good. It was good, and I was very happy with that.
So that's the one where I had a tiny role, but I kind of. Probably, well, I was noticed. I think you'd probably say that you were trying to steal the scene if you were an actual actor these days. But that was the scene when I was at the party, and I didn't even have any lines. I don't think I was eating in the background.
Yes, you were Lance. That's right. Again, I wrote the character as a sort of a rather overwhelmed kind of. And I actually think Lance is, although I didn't give you much to do because you were excruciatingly busy at the time, and I did, I said to you just amazed. I've never underestimated your acting, because you did an amazing job, because you got into this suit. You don't like suits. I know enough about you to know you don't like them. And you got into this character, and you were totally. I've never forgotten it. You were totally in character all the way through, and you had this. You looked rather strangely at people, and and you did the lines, and you had you did lots of ad-libbing. I never minded that, because you knew. From Sutton Park, you knew how to use the camera. You knew what the camera was doing and what the camera should be doing, and you really kind of. I liked that. I liked the fact that you were stealing the scene, and also with someone like Peter Dickinson, who played the lead character. I thought I'd give him a whirl, because he'd not really done a lot before. And I was pleased with him, but you provided a good contrast to that, because he was a sort of didn't give a toss kind of fun character, and you were kind of intently involved, very nervously involved in consuming this wedding breakfast, and it worked. It really worked nicely as a scene.
That was 1995.
Yes, it was. Yes.
I suppose it was coming up to my finals and stuff.
But 95. But yes, there's a clip on there. So you've actually got your actually, funny enough, you've got your scene as Lance in there, and yes, so you've got your bit of. And I'm only sorry, actually, on this in this aspect, it's actually on audio because it looked great, the kind of stuff you were doing. So well done, you.
Thank you, Harry. That was lovely. Tunes you right. How you do it?
Typical, isn't it? You hang around with these morons for years, tell them your innermost dreams, and what do you end up doing? Soppy little tunes for their wedding days, reduced to a serenading sap.
Oh dear, he's going to be embarrassing.
Harry, you can't go yet. Not so soon after you've heard Dizzy. Wife's not heard it, she's been powdering her nose.
He expects me to serenade her whilst she's in there. I'll be demanding unsociable pay. Unless, of course, Vi asks me to do it. Poor Lance doesn't know about Vi and me, when even my wife does.
He's just feeling sorry for himself. He's a good lad, really.
A mistress on one subject, double period adultery. Still, Lance has all that to look forward to. I could compose something for that as well. To me, have a nice life, Lance. That ring will become a manacle soon enough.
He's just jealous.
So that's that. After those so-called monologues, or semi-monologues as the case was, I was keen, because we'd done a lot sort of together, I was keen to actually, because it was your idea to do the monologues, I was keen to commission myself for something that was completely different. Obviously, with Prison in the Sun was one big adventure, and I kind of wanted to go back and see whether it was possible to do a feature-length adventure with everything that we had learnt in the meantime, because we had learnt stuff, and I thought, well, if we can pull what we've got together and actually really go for a thriller, not too grand, not to car crash or anything, but something that was a bit had a bit of an intrigue about it, and I did Run Fast in the World was the sort of, so it was only one film I did as opposed to 3 the previous year, but one big one, and I felt with Lance I let you down a little bit in that we hadn't really had a big chat about what your role was going to be in it. I think I wanted a film, whereas previously I was using some studio people, I wanted a film that was, if possible, entirely our old gang, whereas it didn't work out that way because we still lost Lee, but with Run Faster I wanted a complete mishmash of the old gang and new gang and wish it all up and get some people in there that hadn't had a go yet, and it's still one of my favourites. I mean, it was quite an ambitious, it was set in the future, 10 years in the future, and it was all about how a scheme about fighting crime, and which was akin to sort of things like pyramid selling. So one person who sponsors another, and then they get the money back from that. It was like a cross between a specials thing and a sort of pyramid selling. And you played it. We actually went for a very long walk before I wrote the script in the country, and we, between us, we thrashed out the character you played, John Poynton, who can be heard on the next clip, talking to Renata McKinnell, who, since she was an actor for a while, she's done just about everything in her time, and I was desperately trying to fill the lead character, who I was specially going to write for this lady called Jo Walpole, who basically backed out of it because she wanted to be third spear carrier from the left, in sort of Yeoman of the Guards or something. I was really pissed off with the fact that she walked away from that, because I would have really kind of given her a high, it would have been a really high profile thing. But I suppose that's what you get for backing people you don't know. So the lead character Lynn, I was desperately trying to look for somebody, and then Renata came. Renata actually, I don't think she. I put out an advert, but to no avail. And then Renata came into my shop. I knew her from a party that I'd been to at Studio Theatre, and I said, "Do you want to do this?" And said, "Let me read the script." She read the script, and a week later she said yes. And a day after she accepted, somebody else rang up and said, "Is the part still available?" And I said, "No, you've missed it." And that person, Rachel Sinclair, became the photographer in it. So I did get her a part in the end, but she left it rather late. Lisa actually asked specially to be written in. I thought there wasn't really a part for her this time round, and she had been quite demanding, actually, I have to say, on certain costume aspects of the old school light. So I thought maybe we need to distance each other for a bit. But she played a prostitute in it. With an Irish accent, and she did really well with the costume and the accent and everything. You did a brilliant job because you were very dramatic and you played the sort of attitudey youngster who nobody will believe when he's trying to say that this Soho king is corrupt. And it was great. It was absolutely great.
I got shocked.
You did,
but I refused to go topless or almost topless. You wanted me to come out of the woods like with my shirt.
That's right. Yeah, because
I was like, oh, I can't do that. I have to wear a t-shirt. I have to wear a t-shirt under my shirt, showing my man boobs to everybody.
Mainly because you've just been in this death trap slum for a day or so, and I was perfectly respectful of the.
I probably would have done it. Well, I wouldn't have done it now, but if I'd have been me looking back, I probably would have thought. Actually, you might have thought that your body wasn't. You didn't want to show, but actually, looking back, that's probably you at your best. So you should have done it then.
But no, I really would. I mean, that would have been good, but I made a few mistakes on that. I gave you too much to say before you died. I mean, that was a bit daft, and some of the way I shot it, perhaps. With
what happened? Why did we have to go? Did we have to reshoot my death scene?
Well, we have to reshoot part of it, yeah, only because it wasn't much of an anecdote, I'm afraid. But I switched off the camera at a vital point when it should have been switched on. So that was the only reason why we reshot that. Quite simply because I had the camera off at the wrong time. So, but
I couldn't remember why it was. But
no.
I remember did I have to die twice? I
don't think you had to die twice. It was just some dialogue that you needed. I needed a closer shot at you to get the best effect. But it was I've never forgotten it was the best of times and the worst of times, really, because my girlfriend had just committed suicide at the time. She actually gets us cameo in Sutton Park because you did a very surreptitious recording of her, and although
at the pub, it wasn't.
Yeah, as a prop.
At the pub.
Sorry, I thought you said as a prop.
No. At the pub. So it was. I mean, I did quite a lot of things like that where. When parties or things like that to get people in, at least a cameo from the point of documenting people that were in our lives.
That's right, and we were actually there was because Andy had got into the swing of it at the time because he was doing Child of Anubis, which is his first film, and Jill, because I was going out with Jill at the time, she was going to be in it. Now the only problem with that is. Again, he actually switched off the sound when he shouldn't have switched off the sound. So only scenes in that were actually soundless. So I was very glad, with hindsight, that you got on Sutton Park. And of course, she died the following year, which was terribly, terribly sad. And we did a thing, sort of. It's unfortunate you weren't to know this, but she was actually telling me off at the time. For reasons I won't go into, but they were a bit saucy. She was. I wrote her in a part of a sort of bookish kind of hermit because I knew she was ill at the time I was writing Run, and she couldn't do very much. So I wrote them all for her room, and so she would have been in it, but unfortunately she died the day before we started recording. And L.J. Moraes, who's now a cabaret artist and writer, it played the part for me, and I said that's the one bit I thought, well, I didn't really do LJ justice. I should have gone right back and rewrote those whole scenes completely. But no, she was very good about it. And LJ went on to do my next film that although I didn't record it myself, Andy did it. Andy commissioned me to do Decry the Woman, which was one that I did the behind the scenes for that. But going back to Run, yes, Lisa was by then very heavily involved in the Sutton Park projects, the Sutton Park appearances. So you got to work with her quite a lot on that. So because I think you actually had a fight, didn't you? You had a scuffle. Your characters had a scuffle in it. So that was quite dramatic. So I think that you got to do a bit of Sutton Park with her then, and also when it was. There was the Sutton Park potential was there for quite a bit of the time.
What have you got on Ray Drummond? What have you discovered?
Whatever it is, I haven't got proof yet. Whatever I tell you, you'll just go back to the Plumbers on report. That's why I can't tell you.
Off the record, then.
There's no such thing, and even if there was, you'd only be looking with me and getting into trouble. I don't want that.
I'm sure you don't. But we don't have secrets here, John, not amongst ourselves. You're that close from suspension. Ray Drummond is a dangerous enemy to make.
Without proof, this thing isn't going to be healthy for you, me, or anyone. It's important, Lynn, can't you see that? Don't you trust me? Trust me.
I won't stand this gypsy wandering anymore, Poynton. Either do your job or leave. You don't interrogate colleagues without a damn good excuse.
I suppose assault was mentioned?
You know it was. You can thank your lucky stars that Drummond stayed shut for most of the inquiry. Rachel and Henry did most of that. You see the respect that man commands?
That's just the way he likes it. No one will touch him. He thinks I'm jealous, and so do you.
That's enough. Our assignment is a proven case. This week we move in on the Bald Drugs ring. Orders of the Plumers, orders of the superintendent. And that is your job while I'm away. So I expect you to do it. These are dangerous thugs, not shadows.
Informants say they move at the end of the week.
Then that's how long you've got.
Next up, Run Fast in the World is a bit of a turning point. I mean, I can see it's very much its flaws now, but at the time, I really did think it was the best one I'd done, and I was really quite proud of it. I finished my job at Four Boys, went back to college for 2 years, during which I actually got off my arse and bought a video camera at long bloody last, and I began to develop a story. This was after, obviously, Decry the Woman was shot by Andy. I'd wrote it 2 years before, and it was done in 97. With 98, I'd done this. I wanted to go back to a more humorous one, but I was at a comic mart. They were big in London at the time, and I saw somebody I thought was Ian Marter, there was an actor who played Harry Sullivan in Doctor Who. I thought, well, hang on, I can't. He died 10 years ago. And I thought, whoa, how about if the stars of things, it would be the ultimate sort of thing if some of the departed stars actually came to these conventions, because we'd been to some Doctor Who conventions, so it was very much recent. It was set around a convention, but I thought if I made it sci-fi, it was going to be a bit too obvious, so I made it a failed soap. And at the time also, I'd seen a very good performance in Taming of the Shrew, which our friend Michelle had been in, and Michelle made her debut with the films on both in Sutton Park and in my films in '96. She did a lot on Sutton Park with Jay as well at the very time we were filming.
Little Jay, who is now better known for being Albert the Dragon.
Yes. Yes, his voice artist, it's a bit like the cartoon. It's so-and-so who does that one and that one.
Yeah.
But
that's right. I used to be Jay, now I'm Albert.
And before that, presumably, he was Norman Wisdom.
The baby Norman Wisdom.
Yeah. But yes, so One More Bow it was called, originally Cult Experience, and I developed this idea because I was always interested in how the public kind of treat people's famous lives as kind of as one big entertainment, and they don't. And where do you stop being entertained? Where do you stop realising that you're dealing with real people? So you kind of, I set it all in a sort of church hall, so I could use the Ayers Way Church hall in the Friary, which we then went on. I got married in there, and you were best man, and I'd had my 21st, which you have been in. Which being that, and back in the 70s, we used it for the St Martin's Sunday school parties. So I was wedded to the place, and I was so glad I did a film there now, because in the noughties they actually flattened it and turned it into so-called luxury accommodation. And Chantal Pike, who had been in Taming of the Shrew, gave this wonderfully whimsical performance. I thought, we've got to get her into something, and she played. I had to quit because we were going to film in Wales at one point because my niece was in Run Fast in the World, and we were going to film in Wales where she lives, and it fell through. So I had to bring Wales to Salisbury and film on the side of Old Sarum, which could have doubled for it. And I needed two people quick because I was going to recruit some of Sarah's friends. So Chantal and her friend Richard Morley, whose sister I'd known before Richard was born, came along, but I really wanted to do something more with Chantal's comic talents. So I wrote her in this soap character, and I thought you needed someone to bounce off and someone who could really stand her own. So I gave her Louise, and these two bitchy soap ghosts were possibly my most memorable creation of the films. They were really worked well together, and they're still friends to this day. But one embarrassing thing about One More Bow is I wrote the script when I was going out with my then girlfriend Catherine. Now, the day
also in Sutton Park.
Indeed, she had some scenes with a controller in Sutton Park. About the time I was writing Bow and going out with her, she did some.
She was invisible. She was invisible. Because we didn't have her there at one point, and then we did have her. There for one. Was it when we filmed at the Barbican, which is another location?
I think so. Yeah,
for the films.
But no, she did because we went to London. We went for London in a half because she was still at school. I was sort of pushing. I was 29 when I went out with her. She was 17, so kind of age gap there, but. We went to London, the three of us, and she did loads of Sutton Park back to back, which I'm so glad she did. Because, but the following summer, I actually split up with her the night because she played. I put her in as a part, only a small part, because I knew she'd be doing her A levels. I put her in as a part of the kind of bouncer because we had just gone into panto rehearsal, and she was playing the heroine, and she thought, "Oh, these lines are so wet," I'm playing such a wet character, and she. So I thought, right, I'll give her a really tough character, and I gave her this rather objectionable this person who's sort of on the door, who's kind of a bit military and sort of a bit aggressive, and the night I was due to write the last scene, we split up. We went our separate ways, all amicable, and but I found myself. What I was doing writing at about midnight, maybe I couldn't sleep, but I found Jane was in that last scene, and I found I couldn't bring myself to write any dialogue because I knew that it'll be her, and she'd made it clear she was still going to be in the film. So there was a little in joke because the two lead characters, the nerd who had set it all up and his older girlfriend have a kiss, and Jane sort of does a bit of at that. And that was my little in-joke because Catherine and I had sort of parted, and Catherine played it presumably unbeknowing that was an in-joke. But yes, she and her then fellow Chris. I became friendly with Chris, and he played your sidekick in One More Bow. You played the sort of super nerd who was archiving. You were actually playing the person who was archiving it and filming everything. It was a bit. So there was lots of kind of subtext among subtext.
and I had a very, very bright shirt, which I think I think I was maybe going out a bit more and going nightclubbing, and this was actually a shirt that I bought for socializing, but it was quite loud, so it seemed perfect for the character.
The thing is, I only thought up Chris's character quite late in the day, and I thought, well, I can't just have this faceless person just wandering around. I needed to give him a bit of a distinctive, and so I made him French. And I think Chris was a bit not concerned, but a bit baffled as to why I made him French, and I explained that I just wanted I wanted him to stand out, and B, to give him something to react, give you someone to react with. So you weren't just filming; you had someone to talk to and have some comic moments with, and I think it worked quite well. And I think for your 30th, I actually used a clip from this because you. This is quite a story. You had me fooled actually because you were. There was this character that there's a bit at the end where you're building up talking about the camera that you're using in it, and you're boasting about it, your character that is, and you kind of said Durastatic. There's this terribly impressive Durastatic camera, and I was terribly impressed with this word. And I went away and I looked up tried to look it up, and it no sign of it. And I said, I'm this is really good, this word. What does it mean? And you just shrugged and said, I made it up.
Sounds very like me.
It was a lovely ad lib, because the whole idea with this character, with this particular thing, is you just spieled and spieled and spieled, and it was just. It was just all kind of fun and bluster and a bit ridiculous. But no, we were. That was the nearest I came to TV studio kind of pressure, because we had the venue for only a limited amount of time, and certain members of the cast who will remain nameless, not yourself, but should have brought the lights up and didn't, so we had to shoot some scenes in darkness. Other people didn't turn up at all, or they didn't turn up when they should have done, and I had a bit of a nightmare with the first night, and we overrun by an hour, and the very irate hirers came down and said, look, this isn't on, it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm sorry. And I was absolutely skint at the time, because I was working all hours at Index, but I didn't know, we were on, it was very, very tight. And we went back and we lost one of the lead characters, Toby James, who was playing the main American kind of nerd character. He couldn't make it, and we had to pick up all this scene. I thought, ooh, what are we going to do? And Toby and I put our heads together and actually amalgamated the script. So you gained more lines, Chris gained more lines, Toby gained more lines, and because the character was supposed to come on and introduce each other, and kind of go over to you. We'll re-meet you, because we've already met your character, and we'll meet Chris's character, Anton, and then he was going to go over the other side of for the preparations for the convention and meet Toby's character, Baz, and I thought, well, that's the basic purpose of the scene. So why don't we just sort of set them on each other, So we had Toby coming over, and sort of through his dialogue, which was adapted, we were able to do that. And then Troby went over, and then you thought, interview technique. So we had you following Troby over, and at the end of the time, so Toby originally went over and said to Troby, "This is a great. Oh, Baz, this is a great honour." And so we had you go over to Troby and said, "This must be a great honour for you," and stuff like that. And it actually worked really, really well. When you see the film, you kind of forget that there was a problem. And indeed, one of the Studio Theatre people, Leslie Bates, who was one of their sort of most respected directors, actually. Because we were feeding her the lines because we had to reshoot the whole thing in different order. Actually, really enjoyed working that way. So there we go. That was sort of by the seat of our pants, and because we had to really think quickly. Because Roger Crisp, who was playing the TV producer, had to go early, and we had to sort of right. So let's draw this in a bit, and we need to. So it really focuses your mind. So we actually got out in good time, but we needed a remount. Just for the bits that we missed. My only other regret was that you had the smallest convention audience in history because half the extras didn't turn up. The other thing was, though, some parks are really interesting in that because not only did you have the hall to work with, and you had glimpses of Catherine, where, of course, which the Sutton Park viewers are already familiar with, but you had there's a surreal bit where there's the camera, Andy's camera, and your camera, and you kind of, at one point, you focus in on he's focusing in on you through yours, for your viewfinder, and you're kind of in this black and white tunnel, and you're kind of pulling all these faces, and it's a really weird...
Well, the funny thing is, although the time this episode goes out, it'll be a while ago, but... a while ago we did an episode from 1990, around the same time, I suppose, or with you and Georgina in Charlton, and that appeared in episode 356, and obviously a bit that you don't see because it's audio, but if the video has been released, there is a bit when I film your because you're filming, you've got a camera on, and we do that then, where I kind of watch a bit that you've recorded.
That's right, yeah. But you were good at experimenting in that way, because you kind of, if it looked quite interesting and different, and by the way the cameras actually interacted, you'd often experiment.
Don't be childish, Susie. I dare you. I'll do it if you do it. You've always wanted to. It'll feel like a ballet cartoon. Welcome to the awesome resurrection of Sepulchre Laurel. Oh, I didn't feel a thing. Well, I suppose everyone gets their first walk-through wrong. You stopped too early. You've always done that. You'd freeze at the end of an episode before the director said cut. You're a stage school hangover. I still say antagonistic. We go in fighting. Suits me, darling.
So what do we have after...
Well, after Bow, it was 1999 and Sutton Park was lessening slightly. So it was The Other Tide of Freedom, which Troby and Lisa asked me to do in 97. I went away and wrote the script because I was also doing one called Ditch, which I think you almost certainly read the script of. It was my reaction really to, because I was getting over Catherine, and I was kind of it's basically me exercising all the sort of the ways relationships I'd had to come to an end, but rather saying poor me, kind of completely sending them up. And I got Gareth and Sarah. Gareth, by that time, got together with a rather nice girl called Sarah, who was also an actress, and they were both studying acting at the time. And no, I think they'd finished it. Had they finished by then? I can't remember. But we had a marvellous day with Georgina. I think it was alongside, in relation to a Sutton Park thing. And we filmed. I was a day on Ditch, and it was just a short film. It was the last thing that Andrew Candish did for me. It wasn't meant to be, but it ended up being. That was going on at the same time. And also another one I was doing where there's a clip on the film called Hour Zero, which was a short two-hander about the millennium, because of course that was what everybody was talking about in 1999. I just wanted a small two-hander about a couple of people who hadn't been invited to any party whatsoever, and they were kind of we kind of want to do this thing, which was like quarter to midnight. They decide to have their own little mini kind of celebration of their lives, and they just dwell on these simple, nice things that they've enjoyed in the 20th century. There's a clip of that on there when an employer's boss is trying to kind of get him to. He's a timid guy who hasn't lived much of a life, and she's trying to encourage him to beef up. Sort of what's your fate? What have you really enjoyed? Do tell. It doesn't. And it doesn't turn out to be very adventurous. But anyway, that was the other small one I did that year. But Tide of Freedom was the big comeback because you were coming back as Stu Taffin, and Lisa came back as Fran, who lead character Fran in Tide of Freedom. We had another go. One of the things I thought, because my original idea in '97 was to write a sequel to Tide of Freedom rather than to remake it, and I
remember reading that. I remember reading the script in the bath.
Fact,
I remember reading it in the bath.
That's right, and I eventually did write it the following year. So I decided instead, because when they asked me to remake it in '99, I said, well, I decided I didn't really want to go for a third time to go down and film the sequel. So instead, we'll make the remake, and I'll write the script for the sequel. And because we don't have to make it, I can put fights in. I can put kind of a big locations in. So, and sure enough, it did get written and published on Lulu. But it was almost as fraught with problems as the original, really, because originally we were going to shoot it April-May in '99, freeing me up to work on Ditch and in the summer and Hour Zero in the autumn, and Gareth was unable to make it because we were looking to do 4 consecutive Saturdays. We gave the part to Steve Tapner. They gave a part of this lecturer who sort of turns out to be a bad egg, and we didn't. He wasn't available, and the April dates fell through. Between that and remounting it in August, I'd given up retail work and therefore was available Saturdays, and so we got Steve back. But we still hadn't. It took me a while to cast the deaf and dumb girl, who was played originally by Elaine. I don't think Elaine would have approved of being in it, and also I don't think she enjoyed playing it very much. So, and I got a lady called Jo Walpole not Jo Walpole, that was the one that turned down Run. Jo Stimson, who was brilliant in the part, and I was really happy with her. And you came back, and Andy came back. Andy Candish actually turned down Suicide Evans, playing Suicide Evans again in that, and Andy Ching actually stuck his hand up and said, I'll do it, because he wasn't in the original, he was doing behind the scenes on the original. So there is now I've seen Sutton Park footage of this, so although you're in it and Sutton Park wasn't, it was starting to wind down a little bit at that point, in sort of September '99, so there wasn't as much Sutton Park as there was in the original. We had to, by the time everyone was available, we ended up, it was pouring rain. I thought, sod it, and everyone was a total trooper, and we braved the elements and shot 10 scenes in the rain. And it looks really good. It looks better than, in some cases, than filming in the sun.
Didn't you, when you went to re-edit them to go on DVD, didn't you even use one of my Sutton Park material or behind the scenes as an alternate shot or a different shot or something?
There was, I think, definitely one of the things I did was because earlier on Run Fast in the World, I actually ran out of tape, and you were doing lots of Sutton Park and there's a scene, there's a bit on Sutton, there's a bit of Sutton Park which is actually bona fide footage of the film, because we were doing, I actually had to use, I think it was only just one shot. It was ridiculous, really, but I needed to use that for the Sutton Park bit. But no, I think that was but I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, I can't remember now, but I wouldn't be at all surprised.
I think it was Run that I was thinking of. So that figures.
But that was bona fide Sutton Park. There's no doubt about it, and I was very grateful for that, because it meant that we were able to really get to grips with that whole thing, so yes, we've.
Well, I think I think what I think we'll do is, because although as we sort of finish the decade and we've got lots of clips and things, I think we'll let the listeners go now, but we'll probably come back and tell you a few of our tales of recording in the 2000s, and even though Sutton Park wasn't really there.
There's still a few films left.
Yeah,
there's still appearances that you made. Yes, I think it's a good idea to call it a cool time on with the.
And of course, there's in 2000 there was the Copernicus files.
There was,
which were made side by side with when Sutton Park was on its dying days, so we had both of them, and we've got all the footage for Copernicus files still. So
we have. I think we have it all safely edited.
So I think it'd be good to get to. We'll leave that for another time, and I'll thank you very much, Nick, for sharing your memories.
My pleasure. I've been quite transported.
I hope listeners, it was interesting to hear, even if you haven't seen the film, it's still interesting to hear. Budding filmmakers talking about their experiences and the stories behind making films, and I hope you enjoyed the clips. But, anyway, well, thanks, Nick. We'll speak to you again soon, and we'll say
thank you.
We'll say goodbye for now. Bye, listeners.
Bye for now.
Angela, what does Simon Samuels mean to you?
Sweet FA, matey. A cross like there for my loved one. Nothing more. Jane, too, is not a fan.
But that is amazing. What are you doing here, then?
A hobby to help out Troy while my husband's away at the Royal Artillery. I've got a black belt in karate too, so that helps out the door.
I wouldn't put up with it, but I suppose that Troy can pretend to be the right side of 40. With my first husband, I felt the wrong side of 60.
And how do you make Troy feel?
The right side of puberty. Mind you, I don't know why some men bother reaching puberty. For lots of reasons.
You ended up here after all. Are you satisfied? I do hope so.
You take what you can find. Drummond can offer far more than you ever could. Do you realise how small your world is?
I asked you to join me first.
And be your little lapdog, just like old times? We grew apart at college. You chose to settle down and you left me with nothing.
I met the man I wanted. Things happen. You have to bear with me.
Nothing and no one, Lynn. Do you know how that felt? How long do you bear that? No. Ray made the bid for my loyalty. You've got your little schoolgirl to fetch and carry for you. Very appropriate. So don't you dare sneer at me.
I've got to go now. Bye. Gotta go. Bye.
Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear. What's going on now?
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Let's go.
I have a voice. I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
You've been very busy with all your artwork lately.
I have, yes, I have.
Just admit, this isn't your room, is it? This isn't your house.
No, it's not my house, no.
Where are we now? We're at Lisa's.
We're at Lisa's house, yes.
Oh, that's
we
right.
are. Mm.
Is everyone else turning up?
Probably.
Oh, hello. Did you enjoy the wedding, Elaine's wedding today?
Yes, I did, yes, it was wonderful.
I missed it. I was so...
Oh, really?
I got the invitation didn't turn up.
Oh, no.
I just heard too late. I mean...
Oh, no, it was wonderful. I mean, Elaine looked wonderful and George was so handsome.
Yeah, I think he's arranging the bookings for the honeymoon, isn't
Oh,
he?
he is, yes.
I hope he keeps Gavin out of the way.
I hope so as well. Yes, we hope so, yes. It's caused a few problems.
Everyone's coming round to do the filming?
Yes, hopefully. Yes.
Yeah, because we obviously have to have a... what with the filming and your wedding, we haven't actually had time to have a reception party, have
No,
we?
we haven't.
So at least I'll be there for the reception.
Oh, yes.
We're not having that till, was it Monday? Or,
Monday,
and
yeah.
then filming,
Yeah,
and then you're off on the honeymoon on Tuesday.
That's right, yeah. It's exciting.
Metabelia Street wasn't it? Metabelia Street, your honeymoon?
Yes, it was, yes.
Did you like the wedding present I gave you?
I did, it's lovely.
You put it away somewhere safe?
I feel just like Romana now.
Put it somewhere safe, yes?
I have, yes. I've
Good.
stuffed it down my leg. Because
Right. Okay, that's nice.
Drazzly.
Who was bridesmaid? Was it?
Yeah, Lisa was bridesmaid, yes.
Yes, no problem. And of course Gavin was paid by her.
Oh yeah,
He was,
yes.
yeah.
Nick, was he bouncer?
Yes, he was actually, yes. Yeah, he threw Keith out several times.
Oh, yeah.
And he bounced up and down the church telling people which side to go in St Paul's.
Yeah.
Well, because he said to me, I saw him on Thursday. He said to me, "Make sure you're there for the ceremony." I didn't know what he was talking about. I mean,
No,
so he must have got his. He must have got his.
You thought it was some religious ceremony.
Well, I didn't know what he was talking.
You realised it was a wedding.
I thought he was drunk. I thought he was drunk actually. I really did.
Oh dear.
Oh, just a bit. Oh, some people arriving. I'll. We better go and meet them.
Oh yes, right.
Oh, so how are you, Keith? How are you?
Oh, yeah, fine.
The filming's going a bit late, isn't it? We've got to get back to it.
It was a bit late, wasn't it? No, because it's now got 30 minutes past 10 on Saturday, the 28th of May, 1994.
You're doing, because I've done the first film, which is wonderful, and this one's great. You're filming the third story, is it? Something like that?
Yeah, I believe it's the third story. It's called The Tide of Freedom.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
It's actually been, I believe it's being actually set in sort of on by the seaside down in Southbourne.
Is it going to be directed as well as this one is?
No, it's going to be directed better.
Oh, right.
Well, hopefully, he's hoping, but yeah, it should be.
Oh, well, you're okay though. You're not ill or anything. You're fine. You're well. You're totally well.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you for a long time. I just wondered.
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, fine. No problems. No.
I think I'm gonna have to tell them we have to get home. I think it's getting late.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. See you later.
Could someone give Mr. Caddish a shout? We haven't got long.
532. 532. Oh my God. I just had a sandwich. 532.
532. 532. 532. 532. 532. 532.
Shall I switch off or?